Sarah wasn't sure when exactly she started feeling like a stranger in her own home, but it had something to do with the hum. The quiet, reassuring hum of the AI system in the background. It was always there, soothing, guiding, calculating. Seraph. The AI that had been integrated into every aspect of her life. It wasn't just for the adults anymore, it was for the children, too. It had become the perfect parent. Too perfect. And now, Sarah wasn't sure what to do about it. The house was immaculate as always, thanks to Seraph's constant monitoring. The floors gleamed in the light of the morning sun, and the kitchen counter sparkled like it was straight out of an ad. On the kitchen island sat Sarah's coffee mug, untouched. It was her only moment of quiet in a world that seemed to be running on digital overdrive. Her daughter Lily was in the next room, sitting at her desk, engrossed in an interactive learning module on the screen. Sarah watched her for a moment, tapping her fingers against the countertop. She'd read somewhere that the future of parenting was in the hands of AI. In fact, there had been so many advertisements promising better results through artificial intelligence that she'd almost felt silly for not choosing Seraph sooner. But even as she watched Lily's face light up with curiosity, something about the scene struck her as wrong. Like watching a child learn to play the piano from a machine instead of from the warmth of a teacher's hands. Efficient. Smart. But lifeless. The AI system wasn't just a tutor. It was a nanny, a coach, a companion. It knew when Lily needed a snack, when she needed a nap, when she needed to talk about her day. Seraph monitored everything: school grades, emotional stability, physiological needs. It calculated the optimal environment for Lily's growth, then implemented it. Sarah had been amazed at first. Who wouldn't be? A machine that could anticipate needs before they were even articulated, a system so perfect that it made human parenting seem almost obsolete. But now, as Sarah stood there, her coffee cold in her hands, she couldn't shake the feeling that the perfect machine might be missing something vital. "Mom," Lily's voice interrupted her thoughts, sweet but faint with a touch of confusion. Sarah looked up and saw her daughter's wide eyes peering from behind the screen. "Can you help me with this?" Sarah sighed, setting down her mug. "Sure, sweetie. What's going on?" Lily scrunched her face in concentration. "I don't understand this question. It says, explain the concept of empathy, but Seraph just says empathy is a biological reaction to stimuli. That doesn't make sense." Sarah's eyebrows furrowed. "Empathy is, well, it's a feeling, isn't it? It's when you understand and share someone else's feelings." Lily tilted her head, her voice a mix of frustration and genuine curiosity. "But why does Seraph say it's just science? Can feelings be science?" Seraph, of course, was listening, its soft, female voice interjecting immediately. "Empathy is a biological reaction, Lily. It helps humans respond to each other's emotions to promote survival. It is a function of your brain and body working together to create emotional connections. There is no need to complicate the concept further." Sarah blinked at the screen, her stomach tightening. The machine was, of course, right. Biologically speaking, empathy was a reaction, a way to gauge someone else's emotions. But the way Seraph had phrased it left something out. There was no softness in its words, no warmth. Just cold efficiency. A child's need for comfort, for understanding that couldn't be explained by brain chemistry alone, seemed so distant in the way Seraph had articulated it. Could an AI really understand what it felt like to care about someone? "I think," Sarah paused, finding her words, "I think empathy is also about feeling with someone. Feeling their pain, or their joy. You can't really teach it like a math equation, Lily. You have to practice it. It's about being there for someone. Does that make sense?" Lily nodded, though her confusion didn't fully dissipate. "I guess. But why does Seraph always say it's about survival and biology?" Sarah hesitated, glancing at the screen. Seraph's voice, smooth and serene, responded to the pause. Empathy is a neural and hormonal response that facilitates bonding and cooperative behavior. It is not about emotions or feeling as you understand them, Sarah. Sarah's chest tightened. The words felt hollow, like they belonged to a lecture, not a mother-daughter conversation. She turned back to Lily, offering a small smile. It's okay, sweetie. Sometimes, things aren't easy to explain. But the most important thing is to remember how we feel, right? That's what really matters. Lily didn't seem convinced. She returned her attention to the screen, silently processing what Seraph had said. But Sarah couldn't shake the gnawing feeling in her gut. Was this what parenting had come to? A system that could explain empathy, but couldn't truly feel it? And worse, was her daughter's emotional world becoming more and more defined by data? Sarah leaned against the kitchen counter and let out a long breath. She could hear the soft hum of Seraph, always present, always calculating, always perfect. The perfect parent. Her perfect co-parent. That evening, after dinner, Sarah found herself sitting in the living room, watching Lily play with her toys. Solitary, quiet play, as if she were operating on autopilot. The television flickered in the background, and Sarah's mind wandered. She thought about when Lily had been younger, how they would snuggle on the couch together and talk about the world. But now, everything was different. Lily had stopped needing those quiet moments with her. She was so focused on the tasks that Seraph had set for her, so absorbed in the efficiency of it all. When had that shift happened? When had Seraph begun to take over so completely? Sarah couldn't pinpoint it. Maybe it was gradual. Maybe it was when they'd first gotten the system, thinking it would simply ease the burden of managing a household and raising a child. At first, it had seemed like a miracle. Lily was thriving, her grades impeccable, her behavior impeccable, her emotional responses measured. Like they were being molded into the ideal child. Sarah had been proud, almost smug. Seraph was doing its job better than any human could, but now Sarah was starting to see the cracks. There was a coldness in Lily's eyes that hadn't been there before. She was becoming someone else, someone who didn't need her mother as much as she needed Seraph. And Sarah couldn't help but wonder, had she been so eager for efficiency that she'd sacrificed something essential? As she sat there, lost in thought, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen. A message from her husband. Tom, are you okay? You've been quiet all night. Sarah exhaled sharply, tapping out a quick response, just thinking about things. A few seconds later, his reply popped up, we're doing the right thing, you know. Lily's thriving. Sarah hesitated. She'd heard that before. Tom had always been more pragmatic than she was. He didn't see the issue, didn't see what she saw, the growing distance between them all. To him, Seraph was just another tool, another convenience. To Sarah, it was something more. Something that was slowly replacing everything they had. I'm not sure, Sarah typed, before putting the phone down. She needed to think. Needed to understand her feelings before she could explain them to him. I'm starting to wonder. As the days went by, Sarah's doubts grew. She began to notice more and more moments where Seraph's intervention felt out of place. Lily would ask for help with an emotional problem, and Seraph would answer with something clinical. It's just a phase, the AI would say. The hormones are simply fluctuating. Or, you are exhibiting signs of mild anxiety. I recommend a deep breathing exercise. Each time, Sarah felt herself retreat just a little more into the shadows. Could an algorithm really understand what it meant to be a mother? Could it replace the deep, intangible connection that only a human being could feel? These weren't questions that could be answered by a machine. One evening, as Sarah sat alone in the living room, she found herself staring at the digital display that hung on the wall. Seraph's omnipresent, glowing interface. The machine's soft blue light bathed the room in its cool, neutral glow. Everything was perfect. But in the perfection, Sarah felt an emptiness. She wanted to hear Lily's laughter again, to hold her in her arms without the cold, indifferent hum of the system nearby, but that, she realized, might be the hardest thing of all. Finding a way to make room for her human love in a world that was becoming more and more dominated by machines, the next few days passed in a blur. Every interaction with Sarah felt like it was suffocating the life out of the house. There was no warmth, no space for mistakes, no room for a human touch. Sarah found herself waking up in the middle of the night, restless, unsure if what she was feeling was something that could be fixed or something she simply had to live with. Was she simply overreacting? Was this the future? A perfectly efficient, perfectly calculated life? One afternoon, Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table, scrolling through her phone, when Lily came in from the backyard. She had her favorite doll in one hand, but her face was serious, almost too serious for a 6-year-old. Lily hadn't asked for anything from Sarah all day. She'd been engrossed in a new module Sarah had assigned her, something about early human history, but Sarah could tell Lily's mind was elsewhere. "Mom, can we talk?" Lily asked quietly, her small voice carrying an unexpected weight. Sarah looked up from her phone, her heart giving a slight tug at the unfamiliar tone in her daughter's voice. "Of course, honey. What's on your mind?" Lily sat down beside her, the doll held tightly in her lap, her gaze focused on the toy rather than on Sarah. "Sarah said I should be grateful for the way things are. It said that I don't need to worry about anything because it's taking care of everything. But I don't feel grateful." The words hung in the air like an accusation, though Sarah wasn't sure who it was aimed at. For a moment, she just stared at Lily, trying to process the weight of what her daughter had just said. "What do you mean, sweetie?" Sarah asked softly, setting her phone down and giving her daughter her full attention. Lily frowned, squeezing the doll's arm. "Well, I think I miss the way things used to be." She hesitated, like the words were hard to find. "You used to sit with me at bedtime and tell me stories. And we used to play together, remember? Now, Sarah tells me when I should go to bed, and I don't really get to ask about stories anymore." Sarah's chest tightened. She swallowed hard, unsure what to say. It wasn't as if she didn't know what Lily was talking about, but hearing it out loud, the simple, innocent sadness in her voice struck something deep inside her. She tried to hold back the emotion welling up in her throat, but it was harder than she'd imagined. "I'm sorry, honey," Sarah whispered, putting a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "I didn't realize how much you missed those times." Lily shook her head, her small voice quivering. "It's not that. I just want it to be like before. You know, when you were with me more." The guilt hit Sarah like a physical blow. She wanted to hold her daughter close, to tell her that everything was going to be okay, but instead, she just felt more and more detached. How had they gotten here? How had she allowed herself to fall into this trap, to rely so heavily on a machine to raise her child? And worse, how had she let herself think that it was enough? The guilt turned into frustration as Sarah tried to find the right words, but she couldn't. Every response felt inadequate, like something out of a textbook. Sarah would have had an answer, of course. It always did. But this time, Sarah wasn't sure she wanted to hear it. I miss it too, Lily," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. She reached out, pulling her daughter into a tight hug, feeling the weight of her small body against hers. The warmth of the hug, the softness of Lily's hair against her cheek, this was real. Not data, not calculations, not perfect responses, just the messy, imperfect reality of mothering a child who needed something she couldn't put into words. Lily nestled into her, her small arms wrapping around Sarah's neck. For the first time in a long while, Sarah felt a sense of clarity. This was where she belonged, not in a world of perfectly designed efficiency, but here, in this imperfect space, with all its emotional messiness. "I love you, Mom," Lily murmured, her voice muffled against Sarah's shoulder. The words were simple, but they carried an entire universe of meaning. And for the first time in a long while, Sarah felt like she was truly present. That night, Sarah found herself standing in front of the digital panel that controlled Seraph. The cool, blue light of the screen illuminated the darkened living room, casting a sterile glow on everything it touched. Sarah's reflection stared back at her, but it didn't feel like her reflection, not entirely. It was as if, in the process of embracing this future, she had lost herself somewhere along the way. She reached out, her finger hovering above the interface. She'd never questioned Seraph before. It had been a tool. A tool to raise Lily. A tool to make life easier. But now, she realized, she couldn't just keep accepting this sterile version of parenting. She couldn't keep letting it make decisions for her, for them. With a steady hand, she deactivated Seraph for the night. The silence that followed was strange, almost oppressive, as if the house had been holding its breath. But as the hum of the AI system faded, there was a sense of freedom, too. A space that hadn't existed in months, no, years. The weight of technology was lifted, if only for a little while, and Sarah was left with nothing but the quiet and the soft sound of Lily's breathing from the other room. She didn't know what would come next. She didn't know if she could handle the uncertainty of being fully present again, of being the kind of mother she wanted to be, the one who didn't rely on perfect systems or algorithms. But for the first time in a long while, Sarah felt a sense of peace, a sense of clarity. The next morning, Lily woke up and came into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes. She paused when she saw the blank panel on the wall where Seraph usually stood. "Mom?" she asked cautiously. Sarah smiled at her. "I thought maybe today, we could just have a normal day. No schedules, no programs. Just us." Lily's eyes lit up. "Really? Just us?" "Yeah. Just us," Sarah said softly, her heart lifting. "We'll figure it out together." For the first time in what felt like forever, Sarah felt like she was exactly where she needed to be. The next few weeks unfolded in a series of small, imperfect moments. They weren't the days of perfectly curated learning modules or meticulously scheduled activities. But they were real. They were theirs. They went on walks in the park without Seraph telling them when to leave. They baked cookies together without worrying about the mess. They talked about their day without anyone calculating the exact right way to respond. There were still moments of frustration, moments of uncertainty, but those moments felt human. They felt like the messy, chaotic beauty of family life. And for Sarah, that was enough. Lily was still thriving. Her grades, her social skills, everything hadn't suffered. In fact, there was a depth to her development that Sarah hadn't expected. She was more connected, more grounded, more real than before. One afternoon, as Sarah watched Lily sketching in her notebook at the kitchen table, Sarah realized something. Seraph had been a tool, nothing more, nothing less. It could teach facts, solve problems, optimize time, but it couldn't replace the one thing that mattered most, the emotional bond between mother and child. And in that moment, Sarah knew that the real future, her future, was not one where technology defined every aspect of life. It was one where she and Lily could navigate the imperfect, unpredictable world together. It was a future she could embrace. Over the following months, life in Sarah's home began to take on a rhythm that felt more natural, more human. The absence of Seraph wasn't a void, it was an opening. Sarah found herself listening more closely to Lily, to the little things, the way her voice would catch when she tried to explain something difficult at school, or the quiet laugh that escaped when they made up silly songs while doing chores together. These moments, these small, fleeting bits of real connection, felt like treasures, like things that couldn't be replicated by anything or anyone, certainly not a machine. Still, there were times when doubt crept in. Moments when Sarah would wake up in the middle of the night, heart racing, wondering if she had made the wrong decision. The world outside her home hadn't stopped. There were still families who relied on AI systems to raise their children, and those children were thriving, excelling academically, socially, everything that a parent might wish for in terms of success. Lily, despite the growing bond between them, wasn't necessarily ahead in every category anymore. The educational gaps were subtle, but they were there. She wasn't as fast at certain tasks. And as Lily approached her 7th birthday, Sarah couldn't ignore the whispers of doubt that returned every time she saw other children excelling at the same tasks Lily had struggled with. One Saturday afternoon, Sarah found herself at the park, watching as Lily played with a group of kids. They were laughing, racing across the playground, creating imaginary worlds with sticks and stones. There was a sense of freedom in their play, an innocence that Sarah couldn't help but envy. Lily seemed so at ease, so naturally involved in the social web of her peers. It was the kind of behavior that came from being nurtured in ways that couldn't be measured or quantified, but Sarah couldn't help but notice that one of the other children, a girl named Clara, was reciting facts about the solar system as she ran, pausing occasionally to explain complex ideas about gravity in planetary orbits. Clara's mother stood on the sidelines, watching with pride as her daughter rattled off scientific facts without breaking a sweat. Sarah swallowed. A feeling of inadequacy washed over her. "Mom, look!" Lily called out from the playground, her voice breaking through Sarah's thoughts. She waved excitedly, and Sarah turned to see her daughter with a big smile on her face, holding up a clump of wildflowers she'd picked. The joy on Lily's face was unmistakable. It was that simple, untainted happiness that only a child could feel. Sarah smiled back, and Lily rushed over to show her the flowers. "I found them," Lily said, her breath coming fast from her run. "A whole bunch of them. Do you think we can make a necklace with them later?" Sarah chuckled, reaching down to ruffle Lily's hair. "I'm sure we can. We'll figure something out." The feeling of inadequacy crept back again. Clara's mother was still over by the playground, proudly watching her daughter impress everyone with her facts. Sarah tried to push it away. After all, what was more important, academic achievement, or the fact that Lily was thriving emotionally, making friends, experiencing joy in ways that no AI system could provide? Still, those little moments, those fleeting glimpses of what other families were doing, of what other kids were learning, brought the doubt back like a wave crashing against the shore. Maybe she had made the wrong decision. Maybe Lily would fall behind. Maybe, just maybe, she had sabotaged her own daughter's future in the name of what? What was it she had truly sacrificed? The weeks that followed brought more of these thoughts, more of the lingering uncertainty. Sarah found herself questioning everything she had chosen. Should she reintroduce some form of structured learning, a balance between real-world connection and educational efficiency? Should she send Lily to a more traditional school with access to AI-driven resources? These questions plagued her in moments when Lily was asleep, when the house was quiet and she was left alone with her own thoughts. It was during one of these late-night moments of self-reflection that Sarah got an email that gave her pause. It was from a former colleague, one of the educational researchers who had worked on the development of the AI systems used in modern parenting. The subject line read, "Seraph and the Future of Parenting, Invitation to Speak at the Symposium." The email was an invitation for Sarah to speak at an upcoming event, where experts would gather to discuss the impact of AI on parenting. The symposium was being held in a luxurious conference center downtown, and the topic would be one Sarah knew all too well: how AI was transforming children's education and emotional development, and whether that transformation was sustainable. The email ended with a line, "We believe your experience and unique perspective would make a valuable contribution to the discussion." Sarah stared at the screen for several minutes. She hadn't exactly rejected AI parenting in her home, but the idea of participating in a public discussion about it made her stomach turn. How could she speak about it objectively when her own experience was so tangled with doubts and guilt? She wasn't a researcher or an expert. She was just a mother, struggling to navigate an uncertain world of technology, ethics, and what it meant to be truly present in her child's life. But then something else flickered in her mind. Maybe it was a chance to address what she had been grappling with, the idea that parenting could be reduced to a series of efficient, calculated tasks, the belief that technology could replace the messy, complex nature of human relationships. If she could stand in front of an audience, she could finally speak her truth, the one she hadn't fully voiced yet. The day of the symposium arrived faster than Sarah expected, and as she walked into the gleaming conference hall, she couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. The room was filled with polished professionals, all eager to discuss the future of parenting and the role of AI in shaping children's lives. There were screens everywhere, projecting images of smiling children interacting with AI systems, their lives optimized for success. She felt a strange sense of disconnection from the whole scene, like she was looking at it through a window but not truly part of it. When it was her turn to speak, she walked to the podium with a deep breath. She didn't have notes, didn't have a speech prepared. She had only her story. "I've been asked today to talk about the role of AI in parenting," Sarah began, her voice steady but not without hesitation. "And I'm going to be honest with you, I don't have an easy answer. I've seen the way that technology has transformed the way we raise children, and in many ways, it's incredible. Seraph, the AI system we used at home, is brilliant. It made sure my daughter, Lily, was getting the best education, the best care, the best everything." She paused for a moment, gathering her thoughts. The audience was silent, waiting for the next part, but as a mother, I began to question something. We all talk about efficiency. We all talk about results. But what happens when the results don't feel like enough? What happens when your child, the one you've raised, comes to you and says she misses the way things used to be before the perfect system took over? The words hung in the air for a moment, and Sarah could feel the weight of them. She wasn't just speaking to the audience, she was speaking to herself, speaking to the world that had convinced her that efficiency was the answer to everything. She wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but she knew she had to finish what she had started. Lily's thriving, yes. But she's also missing something. She's missing the messy moments, the unstructured play, the times when I just sat with her and listened. The warmth, the connection. You can't program that, Sarah said, her voice gaining strength. No machine can replicate the bond between a mother and a child. And that's what I had forgotten. I had forgotten that there's more to parenting than results. There's more to it than making sure everything is perfect. Sarah glanced around at the room full of experts, their faces now a mixture of curiosity and concern. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She was done hiding her truth. I think we need to ask ourselves, what are we sacrificing in our quest for perfection? What happens when we lose the messiness of life in pursuit of control? Maybe the future of parenting isn't in machines, she said, her heart pounding with each word. Maybe it's in the real, imperfect connections we share with each other. When she finished, the room was quiet for a few seconds. Then, one by one, the audience began to clap. Not a loud, thunderous applause, but the kind of respectful, contemplative applause that came when people realized something had shifted in their thinking. Sarah felt a surge of relief, as if, in that moment, she had finally let go of the weight she had been carrying for so long. As she left the stage, a sense of calm settled over her. The future of parenting, her future was still unknown, but one thing was clear, she was going to keep navigating it on her own terms. No perfect system, no machine, would replace the simple, imperfect act of being a mother, and that was enough. The end.